Today we're at Watson Island to go over the details of this transaction. And today I have two special guests here, Commissioner Damian Pardo and Nitin and Motwani from Merrimac Ventures. Gentlemen, if you can introduce yourselves a little bit so the audience can know a little bit about you guys.
Sure. My name is Damian Pardo, and I represent City of Miami District Number 2. And that includes everything where we're at right now, Watson Island, and everything from Morningside all the way down to Coconut Grove along the coast.
Nitin and Motwani, managing partner of Merrimac Ventures. So we are one of the owners of Watson Harbor, where we're sitting today, which is on the south side of the island. And right over my back is what I spent 20 years building out, which is Miami Worldcenter, where I had the privilege of taking 27 acres of land and turning it into a new city within a city here in our beautiful Miami.
Thank you, gentlemen. So residents want to know, did they get the short end of the deal for this transaction, or what was actually going on with the $29 million price tag?
Absolutely not. They got a great deal. I think residents don't understand that there's an existing lease that began in 2001, and that lease would run to 2100. I mean, I certainly won't be around at that time, and nothing would change. What you see right here, right now, is exactly what we would have. I think it was great that we entered into an agreement with the developer and with the city, and we were able to bring benefits to the community that otherwise simply would not happen.
So what is the discrepancy between the $29 million and then the over $300 million appraisal that the city received?
Well, I think that if you look at the $300 million appraisal, it's for something that, frankly, the city does not own, which is fee simple, unencumbered land. Now, that's a lot of complicated words. What that means is if you took this piece of property and you could build anything you wanted on it, 600, 700, 800 condominiums, it could be worth that much money. Now, I will point out that if you look at the 5 other appraisals done on the site, nothing came close to that $300 million number. So that in and of itself was an anomaly. But the numbers were around $100, $130 million. But that assumed the city owned this fee simple, unencumbered, right? We are restricted in what we can build based on a lease that the city entered into with the previous owner 25 years ago. And the city attempted to take this property back from that developer about 5, 6 years ago and lost in court. So that developer reclaimed those rights to 99 years. If we build on this, when we build on this site, we are still restricted by that same density restriction. And so if the city tore up that restriction, if we asked for that to tear up, we would go back to the commissioner and start the process all over again. And the appraisals would be very different because we would be coming back saying we want to build 600 condos, which is what would be allowed here if this were in fact fee simple, unencumbered. So it's just a complicated history.
I do want to say when that occurred, it was a $50 million judgment against the city. So the terms of that lease are very important to live by. Another very important point is I think most people can relate when you go out and buy a home, you get an appraisal. And that person who signs that appraisal is liable, and that company is liable for the value that they're providing to you. In this case, the city received an appraisal and the state of Florida ordered independent appraisals, completely independent, signed by professionals, backed up by their companies. And those values came in below the $29 million. So it's interesting that we kind of just discard these professional expert opinions, including the ones by Miami Herald, because they received opinions from outside experts that also agreed with the transaction and considered it reasonable. So I think reasonable people looking at this and weighing the data would find that $20 million price tag to be correct. And
I think it's a great point, Commissioner, because I think what also gets lost is we paid for this lease from the previous developer. So we paid significant money. We're in for over $100 million into this property today before paying the city the $29 million. And on top of the $29 million in our negotiations, our commissioner said, I want to care about resiliency and affordable housing. So there's an additional $9 million that will be funded towards specifically affordable housing and resiliency. Then we went a step further. This particular part of property is a city easement. It's not part of Watson Harbor. We already improved the seawall on our property. The city said, we want you to improve the seawall on this portion as well that the city owns, that we do not own. And we said yes, which is another $3 million. So that's all on top of $29 million, which was already on top of the highest appraisal issued by the city, the state, or the Miami Herald.
I mean, the city negotiated this very tough. We tried to get the most benefits we possibly could, and I think the city did a very good job when it came to that. Another thing that people ignore is the $300 million in tax revenue and present value tax revenue that we would receive over the life of the lease. So that's a really important number, $300 million, that is usually left out of this equation.
So how do we know that, Nitin, that you're actually going to fulfill on these promises? Residents already signed a lease in 2001. Now we're going into bed with you. How do we know that this is actually going to break ground and we're going to see something here?
Well, I'd say along with our partners at BH3, who are also South Florida based, we have a history of execution. If you look over my shoulder, we acquired over 144 parcels from 43 different sellers of empty parking lots known at what's today Miami Worldcenter. And today it's over $3 billion of development with $3 billion more on the way. 20 years, the financial crisis, the retail apocalypse, everything that could go wrong, going wrong, we persevered, we stuck with the city. And I'd say today, even some of the naysayers who were concerned about our promises on public spaces and vacating roads so pedestrians could walk without worry about being hit by a car. I mean, we gave back over 5 acres on that property that we own, we maintain, we paid for. Not to mention all the incredible impact it had on Overtown, which has now recently created a bond to add further affordable housing based on the incremental property tax we've executed on. So I think, after 20 years of working very hard in the city to earn the respect and trust of our elected officials, our neighbors, our stakeholders, we want to reinforce the fact that we are here for the long haul. We will execute, we will make them proud. And as part of this process, we had, to the commissioner's point, and he was very adamant about this, we spent a lot of time not just saying we bought a lease, we have these rights, it's been reinforced in the courts. We went back to the residents, to the various homeowner associations, to the various business communities. We went face to face and said, talk to us about what you want. Talk to us about what you're concerned by. And we heard and listened to that. And now that we're past this moment, we look forward to sharing with them some of the updates on the design that we think we're going to make everybody very happy. Lastly, we also reduced the density. We actually reduced it from what we could have done here because we understood some of the concerns that residents had around traffic.
Commissioner, how much revenue, I know you touched on it briefly, 300 million, but how much real revenue do you think this development is going to be generating for the city of Miami?
Millions of dollars annually. So it's very significant to the city. And what he mentioned about going out to the residents first is incredibly important. They went out to the residents first. They heard from the residents and our office. And remember, this went to the ballot. This went to the voters. That 25 million was the least we would accept, was in the ballot language that the voters overwhelmingly supported, above 60%.
And when we looked at the property taxes, just on this site, which we're purchasing fee simple, right, is $2 billion over the course of that lease of incremental property tax value based on this transaction. We have 10.8 acres total. 3.2 is fee simple and creates $2 billion of incremental property tax. The balance of the land remains on a lease and will revert back to the city, creating over an additional $500 million in revenue over the course of it. And so when the commissioner is talking about present value, that's the value today that the city can go invest in bonds and let it grow. But if you look at the cash over time, you're talking about over $2.5 billion of cash. And we did an analysis. If you just take the $29 million and you put it in a CD earning 5%, it exceeds what any lease payment would have been. So no matter which angle, if you take the time to really dive into what the city accomplished in the negotiations, it's a very good deal for the taxpayers. It's a very good deal for our community, and it will be a very good deal for our future generations.
Commissioner, so from this tax revenue that we're expecting to collect, how are the residents going to directly see that money? In what form or what shape is that going to be represented?
I mean, everything, infrastructure improvements, you have safety issues with police, fire. I believe a fire station is going on the other side of the island. So there's tremendous benefit that will accrue to the residents, and that's why we're doing it. Ultimately, those residents need to understand that as we grow, we also need all the amenities and all the safe and all the platforms that we use to keep the quality of life and the character of the neighborhoods.
And, I'd say also, in the shorter term, right, because we pay a lot of impact fees, we pay a lot of property tax, they go to do all of these things. But the commissioner and the city didn't stop there. We will be creating a 2.2 acre waterfront baywalk, right? So try to imagine 1,000 feet of pedestrian baywalk, 100 feet wide. So this isn't some narrow thing that you're worried about falling over. This is a park that's along the waterfront with the view behind us that you can ride your bike,
it'll be
push
connected.
the stroller. Connected for the island. We're working on a master plan with the owners of Jungle Island, connected to downtown so people can finally ride their bikes, push a stroller without fear of being hit by a car or vehicle. That's part of our commitment up front. Of course, there's the seawall for resiliency. Of course, there's the affordable housing. Of course, there's the other resiliency and infrastructure improvements we're making. But I think that baywalk, when people understand the scale and size of it along our waterfront, that is open 24/7, paid for and maintained by us, I think that's going to be another big win.
And the public will have access to it.
Need access to it, correct.
So to touch on the history of how this all manifested, Damian, if you can touch a little bit of 2001, that deal, that lease that was originally signed, and how that played into all of this, so the residents have a better understanding about that.
Well, Miami's changed a lot since 2001. So real estate values, all values have, skyrocketed. So you have this lease that was executed in 2001, which at this point is very favorable for the people who hold the lease, and not so much for the city in terms of the payments. And then you had a judgment around 2017, I guess, that $50 million judgment, which I think in cash was about 10 million, and then another 10 million in credits and some others that were more based on economic values. But essentially you have a situation where you have these debts that accrued over that lease and these restrictions that were brought by that lease to that value. So we can't ignore the 2000 to 2100 lease. That is kind of like an umbrella that caps any type of value. And I think that's exactly what Nitin was saying, that you can't look at this like it's just a sale, an outright sale. And I think that's the average person, anyone would view it that way. It's just a sale, like the way I would sell my house, I get that value, but it's not. It would be like selling your house where somebody else is renting it and that value is capped. You can't go beyond that value.
And to be clear, we had nothing to do with the 2001 referendum, and we had nothing to do with the litigation. And the previous owner chose to sell that lease, which we paid for. And that owner realized the value of that lease when we acquired it. What we tried to do in working with the city was to figure out something to make it mutually beneficial, to improve further from what was agreed to and what was litigated in the courts. And what we ended up with something that has less density, better design, more public space, more public good and amenities, and overall more dollars to the city and to the residents.
And I think that's the key, the purchase of the lease and really doing something that was better for the city and better for everyone involved. So it's a win-win all the way. That's why I say it's a fantastic transaction. It's a very good transaction for the residents. And they will see, as you've mentioned, the investment in affordable housing, the investment in infrastructure, and to the general fund of the city of Miami, which a lot of that money goes to police and fire and safety. We want to keep people safe. We want them to enjoy the parks, to have a better quality of life, to preserve the identity of our neighborhoods. I think this does all of that. It accomplishes all of that.
If this deal would have been rejected, what would have been the alternatives for this location?
Well, we would have continued to try to execute on what was allowed, right? And so when you think about the 2001 RFP, it talked about timeshares. Since 2001, I'm not aware of any timeshares that have been built in Miami. It's just antiquated. So as part of the referendum, we did convert that to condos, which makes sense. We also realized that people were nervous about the retail. There was over 300,000 feet of retail designed here. So as part of the referendum, we added office as a commercial definition like it is everywhere in the city except here because of the date. Now, what does office do? It allows for a reduction in traffic because it's less traffic intensive, and also the hours are off. And so we would have continued to work on executing the plan. Now, what would have happened? It would have been more complicated because you didn't have fee simple under condos. And people are used to, in Miami, having fee simple under condos.
Right.
Which is why we didn't do it for the other 8 acres. When you look at cities like New York, or other global cities that have been around a lot longer than Miami, this is very normal, but it's different in Miami. And so when we talked to the city about this, it created an opportunity to increase the property taxes by $2 billion for the city alone over that period of time. It allowed us to reduce the density, improve the design, give more for affordable housing, give more for resiliency, and create this extraordinary baywalk and the seawall. So it was really a win-win situation. Now it's complicated, right? It's easy as a soundbite. And ironically, like, had we just said, we're going to build 1,000 condos,
Right.
you know, like that would have been a very different path. But if you look at this extraordinary view behind us and you look at this piece of property, what has been envisioned here is incredible, right? It's a true mixed-use destination overlooking the water and overlooking my favorite part of our skyline, which is Miami Worldcenter. And so, you know, for me, this is a dream come true for this next chapter.
I think it's easy for residents, especially if you look at the appraisals or somebody shows you just a piece of the appraisal and you see a value like 200 million or 300, to think, oh, wow, what happened here? Something must have happened here. But we were very intentional in our office, opening up our office and inviting anyone to come in, review the appraisals with us, let us know, where do you think we went wrong? Where do you think the appraiser went wrong in these appraisals? There was really no information contrary to what those appraisers put in the appraisals. And I think that should give residents comfort, because it's just like when you get an appraisal on your home. You go out, you get that appraisal, that's your fair market value in that moment. Well, this was the fair market value of this transaction. And it had to be more than 25 million as stated in the ballot language, and it was. And they both came in under 29 million, which was the purchase price. So the city did a good job of establishing its value and of accruing benefits like the 9 million in affordable housing, the resiliency investments as well, and the contributions to the general funds with taxes over time.
And I think to that point, one last comment I'd make on that is you can only sell what you own. So one appraisal said the land was worth X, one said it was Y, one said it was worth Z, right? That number 100 million to 300 million. But the same appraiser who said 300 million said what the city owns to transact, what the commissioner and the mayor and the manager can sell is what the city owns. And that is worth less than $29 million. And we paid 29 plus the 9 plus the 3. So really 30 to 40% premium to what that same appraiser acknowledged what the city owns. So using the analogy of the house, I can appraise my house and sell it. I can appraise the commissioner's house, but I can't sell it because I don't own his house. You can only sell what you own.
What you own.
Right? Similar behind us, the beautiful Kaseya Center where our world-class heat play. If the county went to sell that property as a highest and best use, it would be worth a certain amount of money. We have an incredible basketball team that adds millions to our community and culture and entertainment. That is what can be built there because they have a lease for a very long time. So that land is encumbered, similar to how this land was encumbered.
Could there have been a world where the lease could have been bought out and then the city could have put it on the market or try to get the highest bidder for it?
Well, I think they tried to do that in 2017 in their litigation. They wanted to take it back from the previous owner, not from us. We had nothing to do with that. And their hope was to take that back and then go do exactly what you said. And unfortunately, it ended up with the city writing a check for $20 million and tens of millions more in other lost revenue and costs. So that validated the integrity of that lease, which that previous developer then sold.
What are we expecting in timeline for this development? So how quickly are we going to see a shovel in the ground?
So this land, as we've talked about, has sat vacant for 25 years, which means there's a lot of not sexy stuff that needs to get done. Civic work, civil, water infrastructure. It's an important connecting point for the mainland and to the beach. So all of that work we have been working on, and you will, as you drive by, you'll see things happening underground right now. As soon as this happened, we've got to work. When you will start seeing announcements on the design and all of that will be in the early part of this year. And we look forward, as the commissioner has been insistent on, making sure we go back and do the same rounds to our neighbors, the residents, the business community, and we share with them what we learned from them and how we're changing our plans. Not because we're forced to, not because there's some, gun to our head, but because it's the right thing to do. And we think everyone's going to be very proud of what we have looked at for Watson Harbor.
Gentlemen, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we end this?
I would just add, playing off of what you just said, the residents play a key role here. So regardless of what you thought about this transaction, we're very open. Please contact us, engage with us as we go out and we roll out any future designs or projects. Please participate. We need you. That's really where we get a lot of our direction. So we look forward to that.
And I would just say, you know, this process for us, we acquired the site almost 3 years ago. We went to the city commission over 18 months ago. We went to the voters last November of 24. And it took us, you know, over a year to negotiate with the city. And the city did a great job for the community, for its constituents, and working through a very complicated transaction. In the end, over 5 appraisals were done by us, the city, the state, the Miami Herald, other parties, and they all shared the same thing, that this is above fair market value for this transaction of what the city owns. And we can all be frustrated by what happened in 2001 and 2017. But what I will tell you is we're here to talk about today. And the future of this site is going to be much better as a result of the hard work that we worked on with the city. And the commissioner has been adamant since day one about transparency with the public, about the need to meet in person, on Zooms, by phone, days, weekends. And I would just reiterate what the commissioner said. If there's anyone who has any concerns or anything, please let his office know, because his team has been extraordinary in making us aware of any feedback that they're hearing in real time so that we can respond in real time, whether we agree and learn something new, which often happens, right, when we're designing the public spaces and other ideas, or alternatively, when things are misunderstood and we need to be better or host a Zoom or a town hall meeting to explain these things. So please, we're here. This is the long haul, right? We are not leaving Miami. We are not tourists here. This is our home. Literally, that's my backyard. And we look
And that's
forward
really
to
important. This is your home. These are people who love Miami. We love the city and we want to see it do well. And this is part of that process.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to explain this complicated transaction.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. If you guys have any questions or you want to reach out to Damian or anybody here, please let me know in the comments down below, and have a good one.